Pew report shows TikTok's rise in YouTube's ubiquity. Social media apps can quickly rise and burn out just as fast, but taking a step back and looking at those trends on a longer timeline offers a better glimpse into the big picture. The Pew Report Center's latest report on American social media habits is out, rounding up social media usage trends among US users over the last 2 years. While there may be a few small tweaks with each survey, Pew mostly asks the same questions every couple of years, making it possible to track meaningful changes over time. This year's report surveyed 5,733 US adults, capturing the data from May to September 2023. Most of the findings are intuitive, showing the slow migrations between social platforms, but there are a few interesting moments in the survey worth highlighting. I think one of the really interesting things we saw this year was the amount of stability that we saw in many of the platforms we are studying. Pew Research Center Associate Director Research Godfred told TechCrunch. What is that name? Pew Research Center Associate Director of Research. While many social media stalwarts mostly hovered near their previous numbers in 2021, including X, formerly known as Twitter, surprisingly, TikTok saw a relatively explosive growth over the 2-year timeframe in 2021. 21% of adults said they never use. 21% of adults said they never use TikTok, but by last year, the proportion was up to 33%. Ever use? What's ever use? Is that a real... TikTok's growth among US users didn't appear to stop Instagram from picking up more adoption as well. And Meta-owned app went from 40% to 47% in the same time frame. Take a look at this. So it is ever used, meaning like consistently used, I guess. I wish they would have telling me this. Telling me just like a definition for ever use. See, YouTube has grown by a few percent. Facebook is kind of petered off. Instagram is on a pretty consistent rise. Pinterest, TikTok has just exploded. TikTok is still not a super popular app. Like, it's big, how fast it exploded, but it's not top tier thing, you know? Yeah, it's still growing, but it's above LinkedIn, WhatsApp, Snapchat, Twitter, and Reddit, which I guess is probably one of the most impressive things. How quickly TikTok passed these guys here. Something we really do see, especially with TikTok and a couple of other sites, is just how prominent it is among certain groups in the population, Gottfried said. Two platforms that didn't see much change over the last 2 years were YouTube and Facebook, the two most dominant social apps captured by Pew's survey data. In 2023, 83% of respondents reported ever using YouTube. Did they ever use? Literally, I think it's like once or twice they've ever used it. That just means. I thought like ever use was something, but it's not. YouTube, while 68% they use Facebook, the latter number is robust considering the popular perception that Facebook's star is falling. But within the constraints of this particular study, that didn't appear to be the case. Majority of all age groups are using two platforms, something that really stood out in our data as well, Gottfried said. The data revealed some intuitive but noteworthy age gaps for social app usage. While only 15% of people 65 and older use Instagram, that number is 78% for 18 to 29-year-olds. Snapchat and TikTok showed similar age divides, though a notable 10% of adults 65 and up reported using TikTok. In the survey, 40% of women overall said they use the platform compared to 25% of men. Yeah, we can see the differences. Pew also collected some demographic information on race, allowing the survey to get a bit more granular on how different communities engage with social apps. A few differences emerged, including nearly 60% of Hispanic and Asian adults said they use Instagram, compared to only 46% of Black adults and 43% of white adults. Hispanic adults had the highest rates of TikTok usage, at 49% compared to black adults at 39%, Asian at 29%, and white adults at 28%. Pew's numbers are interesting, but straightforward. But Pew's number are interesting, but its straightforward approach doesn't offer much in the way of insight for why these numbers are what they are. The race and gender differences, in particular, would lend themselves to deeper research. I'm sure if you ask anybody who used these platforms pretty consistently, they would tell you why. Because I would understand why guys would use Reddit, for example. I might need some water here, guys. My jaw's feeling a little tight, and if I'm dehydrated, that's what happens. But yeah, if you are on like Instagram, I'd imagine obviously too, there's like an effect where the more of people there are on a platform, the more the content is kind of skewed towards that kind of community. But there's small incentives that happen, like what device they're using, what type of language they use, what type of art the developers use, what type of people they market to. There's a bunch of those competing factors. Well, the 2021 Pew survey measured Nextdoor usage along with the state of more traditional media apps. The 2023 version saw Be Real instead. Only 3% of Americans surveyed it and said they'd ever use it. The app's inclusion was exploratory, according to Gottfried, and we'd be curious to see what makes the cut in 2025. Maybe Threads or something we haven't heard of yet. It was one of the. It was just one of those ones that was starting to become part of the conversation, and we wanted to make sure we started to get a baseline measurement. Godfrey said, "My prediction: we are going to see way more software come from small developers that just take over the damn world. We have seen it this year already with Palworld. We saw it already with Lethal Company. We've seen it time and time again with many of these small developers building." And I know I'm talking about video games at the moment. I'm referencing video games. But I think this is where a lot of this stuff is going to start to take off. These big platforms are allowing people to connect. One thing we're not considering is the social effect, right, of people coming onto these platforms. The more people that are on them, the more information gets on. The better information people get, generally, the more educated people get, generally. So these platforms are allowing other people to connect and build their own platform. And that's what's happening. So many small projects out there that are just amazing. And also, too, there's small software projects that everybody should be using that not everybody is using right now, that have been free for 10, 20, 30 years almost. And they're just small developers. The reason why is when you have a small group of developers, you can move a lot quicker. You can change things a lot faster. You can revert software problems. You can go in and find bugs a lot quicker. Companies that are incredibly large tend to get way too slow at building software. They'll release something that will work great for everybody. They'll get a generation of people using their systems. But very quick, just like that, people hop over to new and better platforms. My prediction, in the next 5 years, we're going to see an absolute explosion of small platform. The way of the future. My quick prediction.